Join us on Patreon and become part of our journey to uncover history's untold stories. Your support helps us create in-depth content, bring hidden narratives to life, and keep history alive for everyone.
The Caribbean, a region often synonymous with white sandy beaches and crystalline waters, hides a deeply layered and complex history beneath its picturesque facade. Long before the arrival of European colonizers, the islands were the vibrant homelands of ancient civilizations whose cultures, beliefs, and traditions have been overshadowed by centuries of conquest, slavery, and colonial propaganda. Among these remarkable groups were the Carib and Arawak peoples, whose histories are intertwined with resilience, ingenuity, and tragedy. The Carib and Arawak peoples were not only the original inhabitants of the Caribbean islands, but also architects of thriving societies that harnessed the richness of their environment to build dynamic cultural legacies. Often relegated to the footnotes of history books, their stories deserve far more attention and reverence. For they were not just passive victims of European conquest, but active participants in shaping the history of the Americas. This narrative aims to unearth the forgotten histories of these dark-skinned indigenous peoples, exploring their origins, cultures, spiritual practices, and eventual resistance to European incursions. Through this exploration, we uncover a tapestry of knowledge, artistry, and survival that challenges the simplistic narratives often associated with them. Their legacies are not confined to the annals of history. They live on in the identities, traditions, and languages of the Caribbean today. The story of the Carib and Arawak peoples begins thousands of years ago, long before the Caribbean islands became the focus of European exploration. Archaeological evidence suggests that the ancestors of these indigenous groups migrated from South America, navigating the vast and unpredictable waters of the Orinoco Delta and venturing northward into the islands. This migration was not a singular event, but rather a series of movements spanning centuries, driven by the search for fertile lands, plentiful fishing grounds, and opportunities for trade. The Arawak peoples, also known as the Taino and the Greater Antilles, were among the first to settle in the Caribbean. They established thriving agricultural communities, cultivating crops such as cassava, maize, sweet potatoes, and beans. These crops formed the backbone of their diet and were often grown using innovative techniques, such as raised beds and irrigation systems, which demonstrated their deep understanding of the land's ecological patterns. The Carib peoples, on the other hand, were traditionally portrayed as fierce and warlike, a characterization shaped largely by European accounts that sought to justify their enslavement and eradication. In reality, the Carib were a dynamic society, skilled in navigation, fishing, and trade. They were also adept at defending their territories, utilizing both diplomacy and warfare to maintain control over their lands. The distinctions between the Carib and Arawak are often overstated, as there were significant overlaps and interactions between these groups, including intermarriage, trade, and cultural exchange. The Carib and Arawak peoples were not mere occupants of the land, but creators of rich and vibrant cultures. Their daily lives were deeply intertwined with their spiritual beliefs, which were rooted in the natural world. They viewed their environment as a living, breathing entity, imbued with spirits and energies that required respect and reverence. This worldview informed their agricultural practices, rituals, and even their social structures. For the Arawak, the Zimi played a central role in their spiritual life. These were physical representations of deities or ancestral spirits, often carved from stone or wood. Zimis were believed to possess the power to influence various aspects of life, from the fertility of crops to the outcome of conflicts. Rituals involving the Zimi often included music, dance, and offerings of food or tobacco, creating communal ceremonies that reinforced social bonds. The Carib people also practiced a form of animism, believing that all elements of the natural world, animals, plants, rivers, and mountains, contained spirits. They conducted rituals to honor these spirits, often seeking their guidance or intervention in times of need. Shamanic practices were common, with spiritual leaders serving as intermediaries between the human and spirit worlds. These leaders wielded significant influence, guiding their communities through both spiritual and practical challenges. Music, art, and storytelling were integral to the cultures of both the Carib and Arawak peoples. Songs and dances were not merely forms of entertainment, but also means of preserving history, teaching values, and connecting with the divine. Intricate carvings, pottery, and woven textiles showcase their artistic talents and deep connection to their environment. These artifacts, though often overlooked, provide invaluable insights into their worldviews and ways of life. The arrival of Christopher Columbus in 1492 marked a turning point in the histories of the Carib and Arawak peoples. At the time of Columbus's landing, the Arawak population was widespread throughout the Greater Antilles, while the Carib were more concentrated in the Lesser Antilles. Initially, the Arawak were welcoming to the European newcomers, offering them food, gifts, and hospitality. However, this goodwill was met with betrayal, as the Europeans quickly turned to exploitation and violence. The Spanish colonizers, driven by a thirst for gold and land, enslaved the Arawak peoples, forcing them to work in mines and on plantations. The encomienda system, a form of forced labor, decimated their populations, as they were subjected to brutal working conditions, malnutrition, and diseases such as smallpox and measles. The Arawak's lack of immunity to these old-world diseases led to catastrophic mortality rates, wiping out entire communities within a few decades. The Carib, known for their fierceness in battle, resisted European incursions more actively than the Arawak. Their naval prowess and intimate knowledge of the islands allowed them to launch effective guerrilla-style attacks against Spanish forces. However, their resistance was not enough to withstand the overwhelming firepower and resources of the Europeans. Like the Arawak, the Carib were subjected to enslavement, displacement, and disease, leading to the decline of their populations. The narratives surrounding the Carib and Arawak peoples have been shaped by colonial biases, often portraying them as either noble savages or bloodthirsty cannibals. These simplistic characterizations serve to dehumanize them, obscuring the complexity and richness of their cultures. The term Carib itself became synonymous with cannibalism, a label perpetuated by European writers to justify their violent actions against these indigenous groups. In truth, the Carib and Arawak peoples were far more than the caricatures presented in colonial accounts. They were skilled navigators who developed sophisticated canoes capable of traversing long distances. They were agricultural innovators who cultivated diverse and sustainable food systems. They were artists, storytellers, and spiritual leaders who enriched their communities through their creativity and wisdom. Despite centuries of colonization and cultural erasure, the legacies of the Carib and Arawak peoples endure. Their influence can be seen in the languages, cuisines, and traditions of the modern Caribbean. Words like canoe, barbecue, and iguana are derived from their languages, while staple foods such as cassava and maize remain central to Caribbean diets. The spirit of resistance that defined their histories continues to inspire movements for indigenous rights and cultural preservation. The histories of the dark-skinned Carib and Arawak peoples are not relics of the past but living testaments to the resilience and ingenuity of humanity. By uncovering their stories, we not only honor their legacies, but also challenge the narratives that have sought to erase them. Their cultures, beliefs, and contributions are woven into the fabric of the Caribbean and the wider world, reminding us of the enduring power of memory and identity. As we reflect on their forgotten histories, we are called to acknowledge the injustices they faced and to celebrate the richness of their cultures. In doing so, we ensure that their voices are not lost to the tides of time but continue to resonate, inspiring future generations to learn, preserve, and honor the stories of those who came before.